iDS Talks is a podcast dedicated to helping corporations and law firms find new and effective ways to leverage data, giving them a decisive advantage both in and out of the courtroom.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of iDS Talks. My name is Jonathan Sachs, Chief Revenue Officer at iDS, and I'm joined today by Mike Perelman, one of our directors. We're here today to talk about exit strategies, safeguarding ERAs or employee risk assessments for departing employees. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So my apologies to you and to our regular listeners who may hear that my voice is a little different. Apparently, I've brought back a cold with me from Spain. So we're all going to suffer through it. But I was so excited about this topic and getting to talk to you, Mike, that there was no way I was going to delay our recording. So we're going to jump right into it. Now, you got involved in forensics when you were like 3. So understand that as I asked you this first question. All right. Based on your years of experience as a forensic investigator, I want you to share what are some common indicators that would suggest a departing employee may pose a risk to an organization's sensitive data.
Oof, that's a great question.
I know they're all great because I'm the podcast moderator. That's why I asked the question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Being that I'm only 6 years old and have been
Right.
doing this for 3 years or so, there are different areas and different people in different companies approach the red flags, I guess, in different ways. So one factor is a person has access to sensitive information. And sensitive information in a way where a company may consider that to be something that is so important to their work that somebody else having access to that information, like a competitor, would be detrimental. So it could be sales information, right? It could be, how do we price our work? How do we price our products? Who are our vendors and where do we get our materials from? It could be things like design plans for the upcoming, widget that we're making. And if a person has access to that information and they're leaving, that is something that always causes concern. And the question comes up, well, are they taking that data? What's happening with that data? Right? That's always big. Sometimes you don't know what information these people have access to, but you know that they have expressed frustration with a company and made an offhanded remark to someone that I'm just going to leave and go to a competitor. That is very often enough to start the process rolling, to go, oh, okay, what's going on? Why? What are they talking about? There are times where we find out much later in the process that information has hit an industry, or it has hit a certain trade that really was very, very private to a particular company. We find out that, yes, that employee was part of the previous company. And the question is, how did that information now leave the former employee and end up in a new employer? And we take it from there.
Got it. So if they have access to the secret recipe, you probably want to keep tabs on them when they leave.
You also probably want to keep tabs on the secret recipe.
True.
Right?
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Reasonable security measures. Were they taken? What were they? All of that. But this is about ERAs and departing employees. So the next question I have for you is one that is a little complicated, right? A lot of times, from what I understand, and you're the forensic investigator, not me, but an ERA is done early on. You're looking to see if an employee has done something before they left the organization. The ERA may involve legal proceedings after it because of what you've learned from an ERA. So here's the question. How does the ERA process integrate with legal proceedings? And in what ways have you actually seen the findings of ERAs influence litigation outcomes? So this is a twofer.
It's a big and long and complicated question. involving some legal opinions, which
We do not
right, which we do not
provide.
give, and I'm not qualified. But as a forensic examiner, um, what an ERA is designed to do is stress test the essentially the not the organization, but a person, right? Stress test the person in what they are doing before they leave the company. Um, and so we look at various areas, and if we make a determination that there is the taking of data, right? Data leaves an employer or a company or an organization, and someone else is in the possession of it. Well, the next step is one of several things. You need to get that data back, right? That data shouldn't reside there. So, what is the process for getting the data back? You need to ensure that that data is not used. And what is the process of doing that? And then you need to ensure that if it is used, you prevent someone from benefiting from its use, right? So what I have seen is a very direct litigation or multiple litigations that stem from the idea that, you know what, something happened here, an employee took data, right? So you end up going through a temporary restraining order to prevent sometimes an employee from going to a competitor, sometimes a company from receiving that information, to a preliminary injunction hearing where sometimes a preliminary injunction is granted enjoining the the party from using the information. Sometimes that goes into full-blown litigation about, well, you took my data, this is mine, no, this is mine, right? And it goes from a small scale, inexpensive assessment, right, which is an ERA is an assessment, to sometimes, million dollar, multi-million dollar litigation between parties, because obviously not something that I'm opining on, but the value of the information that was taken may be so large that it's worth commencing a $1 million litigation to recover $100 million worth of something,
Right.
right? So we have often seen that happen. We've also seen people prevented from working at a competitor, right? We have seen really good, because most people are good, right? So we have seen good companies turn away bad employees, bad apples, where when they realized that something happened, they said, we don't need this. We'll clean up our systems and we will not hire this employee. So
Right.
the bad apple sort of falls off the tree and ends up on the ground in a way.
So clearly, it seems like ERAs are important in certain situations, right? Definitely something organizations should think about. But this next question I have for you is really geared toward organizations as they're thinking about ERAs and their concern about balancing the need for the ERA with concerns about the employee's privacy. So what advice do you have with respect to this, that balance between the corporate need for the ERA and the potential issues around privacy in that employee?
A lot of what iDS does as part of ERA is related to metadata. And so a lot of times an employee's privacy, not all the time, but a lot of times, can be constrained by not looking at the specifics of the data that is involved in the systems and devices, right? It may be enough to know that there was a USB drive that was connected that had corporate secrets based on file names, right? At that point, you can put protocols around what data gets viewed, how the data gets viewed, what designations you can make towards that data, right? Downloads of specific documents that may indicate they are company information is enough to proceed with that. Now, there are certainly, policies behind use of company devices for personal personal use, right? And so should you have that as a whole separate conversation based on who makes policies and what the policies look like? But in terms of protocols, there are ways to limit what information actually gets looked at. So personal health information, medical records that some people have, 401k and banking statements, right? They may not be very important in the context of a particular employee risk assessment. And so put a protocol around limiting it.
Got it. Got it. All right. So now I'm going to ask you to look into a crystal ball. If you were to look ahead, how do you foresee the evolution of ERAs in response to emerging technologies and changing workplace dynamics?
Well, I think we are always, as forensic investigators, changing and chasing technology. We're chasing technologies all the time, right?
That's a great point.
20 years ago, if we were to do an ERA, cloud storage would not have been a thing. And so it would not have been an area of data exfiltration that we were looking at potentially, right? And so as technology evolves, as the future comes in, so will ERAs. It's essentially finding out common ways that data can leave the company and checking if those common ways are involved in this particular employee's activity, right? If downstream we're going to come up with an artificial intelligence tool that can package up certain documents and summarize trade secret information and paste it into some other environment, well, then we'll end up using that, and access to that technology as one of the artifacts, right? So I foresee ERAs evolving just as technology does.
Interesting. All right. Last question, and it's a fun one. This is where you're supposed to say all your questions were fun, Jonathan, but that's fine, Mike. We'll go ahead. Last question. If you could go back in time and run an ERA on any historical figure from the business world before they left their company, who would it be, and what kind of red flags do you think you'd find?
Oh, that's a tough one. That one is the best question you've had so far.
Save the best
And
for
they were
last.
all great and fun.
Yeah.
I so many come to mind, but maybe is it Adam Rubin? Is it Adam Rubin who left? I believe he was with a company and then went over to Google and started sort of the Android world, right? And or someone like Sheryl Sandberg who went over to Facebook. Um, you know, access to a lot of information, right? We're talking about access to really the foundational or the basic building blocks of what the new company or what their new role is, right? Um, so that would be the first red flag. They have access to everything,
Right.
absolutely everything. Um, now, just based on my 3 years of experience, um,
Remember, everyone, he started when he was
started
three.
when I
He's
was
now
three.
6. Go ahead. Yes. 3 years of experience.
Top level employees typically have leeway in access to technology. So the safeguards that apply to lower and mid-level employees very often are not the same safeguards that apply to executives.
Ooh, Very
And so,
true.
and so the red flags there, despite, you know, Apple having incredible security around their employees, are maybe slightly lowered because
Hmm.
I'm an executive, right? And time again, we've seen this. Well, we have USB blocking enabled, but for this person because they asked and they needed to do something for a presentation on call. It's just easier that way. So, you know, could there be whole companies that are started based on the information that was gleaned when someone left? I don't know. That's something that I hope would never define, but you never know.
Right. All right. Well, good answer. Fascinating answer. Um,
Fascinating question.
Mike, I want to thank you for joining me today. I'd also like to thank our regular subscribers and those that may be first time listeners for spending time with us. If you'd like to learn more about IDS or want to subscribe to our IDS Talks podcast, you can visit idsinc.com or go wherever you normally get your podcasts from. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe as well. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to talking more about data with you on our next edition of IDS Talks.